Welcome to the Book Party Podcast. Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T. Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a transformative episode of the Book Party Podcast. Today we are honored to introduce you to a remarkable author who has taken a unique path in helping others face one of life's most difficult transitions, divorce. Please join us in welcoming Andy Heller. Andy Heller is not your typical divorce professional. He's a successful businessman, an author renowned for his work in real estate and investments. However, his journey into the world of divorce support took an unexpected turn after his own divorce experience. Faced with separations, complexities, emotional turmoil, and embarked on a mission to bridge a critical gap in the self-help space for those navigating divorce. His 8-year endeavor resulted in the groundbreaking book, Take the High Road, Divorce with Compassion for Yourself and Your Family. Andy's book offers a fresh perspective, unlike traditional divorce primers from lawyers or therapists, drawing from their interviews with divorcees, marriage counselors, attorneys, judges, and experts from various fields. He has crafted a game-changing collection of 46 practical strategies, tips, and tools to guide anyone through divorce's emotional, logistical, legal, and financial challenges. In Take the High Road, readers will discover actionable steps to save money, reduce stress, and prioritize their children's well-being. Andy's unique approach equips individuals, even in the most challenging divorces, to co-parent effectively and nurture their children's emotional health. Throughout the book, Andy walks readers through 4 crucial stages of divorce, offering clear guidance and concrete action plans. He tackles tough topics such as emotional and physical abuse, infidelity, and restraining orders, acknowledging that every divorce is different, yet shares common challenges. This book is a lifeline for those during divorce and a vital resource for their friends, loved ones, and professionals involved in journey. Take the High Road is a roadmap to a brighter future, offering well-organized, compassionate approach to healing hearts, preparing for the future, and fostering happier, healthier lives. So, dear listeners, prepare to embark on the transformation journey with Andy Heller as we delve into the wisdom and insights in Take the High Road, whether you're facing divorce or simply seeking to support someone on this path. This simple episode promises invaluable guidance and a new perspective on navigating one of life's most challenging transitions. Stay tuned for an episode that could change lives. So, Andy, why don't you take it from here, fill in the blanks a bit, and tell our listeners about yourself?
Sure. I'll give my story and what resulted in the book, Michael. And first of all, thanks for having me. I will add one thing to the introduction, and that is that the book is also for those who've been divorced. And if you know of anybody in your world, everybody who is struggling with co-parenting together with someone who they couldn't live with, it's probably 60% of the book deals with the period after the divorce is signed as you struggle to raise these kids with somebody that you couldn't live with in the same household. So my story actually is pretty interesting, Michael, and I hope that it's something that your listeners will find really, really motivating. So as Michael said in the introduction, I'm a successful businessman. I've written 2 real estate investment books 20 years ago. I swore I would never write another book, everybody. And all of us human beings, we all have different ways that we cope when we have stress. My own way is I don't sleep a lot, so I read things that might help me. And I also just take notes. As an example, Michael, when my mom was in hospice, I couldn't work. I took notes, and my notes became an article that got picked up in 5 national newspapers in the Mother's Day after she passed. So I'm going through a really traumatic divorce. I'm reading a bunch of other books. I've got this therapist who's just amazing working with divorced men. I'm writing all these notes. And some of these books were good, but the problem was a lot of the books were written by divorce attorneys, and that was from a very, very specific vantage point. Helpful for sure if you're at a certain point. Some books are written by therapists or co-parent counselors, also helpful. So, but I recognized as I went through the process a gap in a divorce book space. And like 2 or 3 years into my divorce, I looked at my own notes, and after having read probably a dozen books myself, I'm like, oh my God, there's this massive gap in the divorce book space, and I am uniquely qualified to fill this gap. So what did I do? I started an 8-year project where I interviewed field experts. I interviewed great divorce attorneys. I interviewed mediators. I interviewed therapists, co-parent counselors, parenting coaches. I interviewed many, many divorce couples who went through challenging divorces, but landed in a place where they're actually able to co-parent well. I said, what were the biggest challenges? What do you do right? What do you do wrong? So what I did that is unique is I took this advice from field experts and I pretty much organized it into a businessman's guide of best practices at how to get through a divorce and also how to co-parent effectively with somebody you couldn't live with. And I am super humbled, Michael, that now that I've launched my second edition to Take the High Road, Divorce with Compassion for Yourself and Your Family, I've gotten almost 100 reviews already, and a lot of them from the therapy community that just says my book is really unique, really stands out, and especially helpful. The last thing I'll say before we start with some great questions is unlike most people going through divorce will not be like me. You won't have a lot of time. You'll be hopefully sleeping more. So you're not going to have the time to read a dozen or 24 books. So that's where my book can really be helpful, is that it takes you through the period before divorce, negotiations, during divorce, and co-parenting for the next 10 years, all in one really 3-hour read. So anyhow, and I'm proud of it. And I did not write this book to make a ton of money. I'm a successful businessman. I've got my careers. I mean, I know this sounds corny. My book is a give back. As challenges my own divorce was, I'm trying to make it easier for other people to embark along this journey.
No, it sounds like you really did some serious research on this, which is really important when you're, writing, a book, especially a nonfiction book, to get the research right. So it sounds like you really, really did a lot of research, and that's, that's admirable for a book like this.
Thank you, Michael. It is. And that's the one thing I'll say is, who am I? I'm just a businessman. I mean, what I believe to be the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, I don't have any training that makes my advice special. So I took the counsel of real field experts, but what I did was organize their advice into a very readable, well-organized best practices manual. And then before taking it to a publisher, I took the final version, which actually wasn't the final version, the almost final version, back to the field experts and say, read this. Please make sure that the advice, you agree with it, and that I'm communicating the advice in the best manner that can help people. And then I got, again, a whole series of additional feedback, Michael, that went into the final version which is out there today.
No, that's great. So on your publishing journey, did you self-publish, or did you go to find an agent and agency published, or somewhere in between, like a hybrid publisher? How did you do your publishing?
Yeah, so there were two steps. Okay, first step is I work with a hybrid publisher, and for those that don't know, a hybrid publisher is where you do some of the marketing, they do some of them. They help you organize the book and create it in the look of a book that is they believe will be successful. But that did not work out. So eventually I made some changes. I put some new chapters together that I felt the first version needed, and then I self-published. And to her credit, my hybrid publisher, she said to me, you know what, Andy, I don't think this model works any longer. I think book authors should choose from either get an agent and find a traditional publisher or self-publishing. The hybrid in the middle, at least my company, we're going to get away from it. So that advice I got at I think in January, Michael, I began working on some changes to the first book, and I relaunched it as a self-published. So I've done both.
Okay. Well, when you wrote the book and put it together, so did you collaborated like on editing, formatting, and the book cover design and such? You collaborated on that, right?
Well, partially. I wrote the first version of the book entirely myself. I sent it to the hybrid publisher. They came back and said, here's our suggestions. And like my book is there are 46 tips and strategies that the books give. All right. And these 46 different tips and strategies were all over the place. They helped me put these 46 tips and strategies in 4 different categories. So they really did a good job on helping me to organize the book so it was really digestible, and that the divorcee or the divorce attorney or the therapist, whomever is reading the book, or the friend who's reading the book to help a friend who's struggling, they can much more not only read the book easier, but for example, if you're already done divorced, you can go right to the parts that deal with co-parenting because you've already got your divorce negotiated and finalized. You don't need to read the first section. So they did help me with organizing the book in a manner that really is befitting the best self-help books that are out there.
That's fantastic. Okay.
Yep.
So take us to a point of what you would consider probably your worst author moment in writing this book.
The worst author moment is, for me, occurred once I published it. And, if you write a book, everybody, most of us will probably be pretty emotionally vested in the book. The book will become part of you because of all that energy you put in. For me, my original publisher, let's just say that we didn't see eye to eye, Michael, on the effort that they were putting in. And that kind of led to our own divorce. I think that my most difficult moment simply was that when I realized that my expectations around the engagement from the publisher didn't meet reality. Okay. And that is a really important point we authors need to understand. And the good news about self-publishing is that you all can control that yourself. So if you want to say, all right, I got a budget of $20,000 that I will put into promoting my book, you can control how that money is spent. You can control the expectations. You can control whether how much or how little a a publisher or promoter will help you. So I think for an author, my takeaway there is I favor a model where you all can control the level of promotion that is done or isn't done on your book.
Yeah, that's a big thing about self-promoting, because you can control all of that yourself. Let's
Yes.
talk about an epiphany moment. It's what I call it, an epiphany. When you're doing something other than actually writing your book. You can be driving, you can be working your other job, you can be taking a shower, I don't know. And all of a sudden, this light bulb goes off in your head, this like aha moment or something. Man, I got to have that in my book. Where is a pen and paper? I got to write it down right now. Because if you don't write it down right now, or talk into your phone and take a note, whatever, it'll fade away and it won't be the same later on. Do you ever have those epiphany moments?
Oh my God, that's such a great question, and I'm going to give you, I hope will be a fantastic answer. Not just what has to be in the book, because there are a number of these instances where things popped up that had to be in the book. I'm going to give you my epiphany moment about what led me to write the book. So within my group of friends, Michael, I'm that guy that everybody comes to who's a reasonable thinker. Okay. So if I have a friend and she's emotionally agitated, or a guy that's having trouble, oh, I know I can talk to Andy because he's pretty grounded. He doesn't get too emotional. He's very compromise oriented. He's the guy I can go to for advice. So I am the reasonable thinker. All right. Now, my divorce, everybody, was a little bit challenging. I don't need to get into that. I mean, but it was really tough. And my ex-wife and I were in front of a co-parent counselor, and she said, you know what? Both of you could benefit from therapists. You got some steam and some stressors that you got to let out. And I said, you know what? That couldn't hurt. But I said, I want somebody who specifically has worked with divorced men and worked well. So she gave me 3 names, and I found this lady. She was amazing. And she ended up being a contributor on some of the advice from therapists that went into my book. So at this point right now, I'm about 2 years into it, Michael, and I'm taking my notes. I'm reading other books, but I haven't decided to write a book yet. So something happened with my ex, and I'm like, okay, I know what my gut instinct is telling me what's the right thing to do. But I'm going to wait. I'm going to talk to my therapist first, and then I'm going to do it because I'm sure she's going to agree with me. So I go in, I say, this is what happened, but don't worry, I've thought it through, and here's the reasonable thing that my reasonable conclusion of what I'm going to do. So she went into the therapy speak. Well, Andy, it's really good that you think it through, and blah, 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 but you're not going to do what you're thinking. You're going to do the opposite, and here's why. And I was like, but she stopped me. She said, Andy, hear me out. And she laid out an action item that was the opposite of what I had intended to do. And as I heard the words come out of her mouth, Michael, I had my epiphany moment, like, oh my God, she's right. And my gut instincts, reasonable thinking, compromise-oriented Andy Heller, was 1,000% wrong with what should have happened. And what I realized at that moment is the degree to which I was emotionally compromised and unable to make optimal decisions. And I thought I was making the right decision, but I wasn't. And that's when I realized if a reasonable thinker like me, who's not trying to hurt his ex, I've studied business practices of how to deal in high conflict situations. I've got this amazing therapist, and I am still coming up with the wrong choices about what I need to do. Joe and Jane divorcee, they could really use some help. And that's what led me to write the book. And that was my give back. It's like, I felt uniquely qualified to take this counsel I was getting from amazing experts around my own divorce, blow it up and expand it to general advice, interview a bunch of others, and take this advice and put it into a best practices manual for divorcees.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
So
it's a
what
great
is
story.
we'll talk about today. What is the one thing that you're the most fired up about or excited about right now, today?
About my book or just life in general? I mean, what do you mean by that, Michael? Where should I go on this?
Anything. What is the one thing today that you're the most fired up about, excited about right now, today?
Well, I would have to say it's where I've landed. A really, really challenging divorce. I had to move geographically to another state to be an available father to my children. And I still was able to build a successful business. I raised my 2 kids. I'm not quite done yet. And I've met a lovely woman. I've remarried, and I'm extremely happy. What I'm excited about is, with knowing how challenging my journey was, I landed in a good place, Michael. And my story, hopefully, can offer a word of encouragement for those that think life cannot get any worse based on where I'm at. I can't get out of this. You will get out of this. Now, part of this are action items you'll need to take yourself. Get my book, read it, listen to podcasts like this. If you can, get yourself a good therapist so you can take steps yourself to raise the likelihood that you land in a good place. But for most of us, we will get to that place where life is better. And I have landed there, Michael. And yes, that's the number one thing I'm excited about, is the great quality of my life today, compared to where it was when I was going through my drama.
Great. This is Michael T. We invite you to go to the bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey, where you can download and follow us there, and please leave a review. Don't forget to sign up for our weekly video newsletter and get the latest information for our upcoming shows. Okay, now we are entering the lightning round. In the lightning round, we have 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. Now, I know that you've been writing books before this. Okay, so go back to before you ever started writing. So this question is designed, before you became an author, what kept you from becoming an author in the first place?
Well, for me, I had vibrant careers. I was doing well in life. I didn't match up my skill set with a book that needed to be written. And it wasn't until I had coffee with a friend of mine who planted the seed. So I was a real estate investor in addition to having a good career. And I met this guy. We're having coffee, getting to know each other. And I talked about my real estate investing model. And he's like, Andy, I've never heard of a model like that. You ought to write a book. So then I started looking around at all these different real estate books that all spoke about different investing strategies. I called up my real estate partner. I said, hey, I think I got a great idea. I think we should write a book. And we kind of did it on a whim, Michael. But until that coffee, it never even occurred to me. In fact, English was probably one of my worst subjects in school. I do enjoy to read, but picturing myself as an author, until that coffee with my friend, never even considered it.
Okay. Well, once you started to write, what was the best advice you had ever received?
Take your time. Don't rush. Don't rush a manuscript. And when I say take your time, that can mean different things to different people. So for me, writing a book was not my primary vocation. So I had to work this into my job, my day job. There are others who are full-time writers. It's what they do. It's all they do. So that author might be able to generate a quality manuscript in 6 months because he or she does this and does it all the time. And I think if you're newer at writing, it's probably going to take you longer. Okay. My real estate partner and I, Michael, are both perfectionists. The benefit of that is it allowed us to create higher quality books. The downside of that is it did take longer because we kept trying to go through our chapters and rewrite them so that the points could land in a far more the best manner where for the reader to be able to process and understand.
Well, that kind of brings me into my next question, is to share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
One of my personal habits is I'm a perfectionist. It can also
that's
be,
what I meant by
yeah.
that's what I meant by leads into the next question, because you kind of mentioned that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
It can also be a curse. Let me just be completely honest with your listeners, Michael. You never think you've done a good enough job, but what it has enabled me to do with the 3 books I've either co-authored or authored is creates something I'm really, really proud of. I mean, all 3 of our books, I can humbly say, are well written. They've all been critically reviewed, and all 3 books I know have been impactful for the audience that they were intended for. So I guess my perfectionism has produced a benefit for others, which is great.
Well, one of the things that I get when I ask that question, or a couple of the things, advice that people have, and so it's not coming from me, it's coming from the people I interview. Write drunk, edit sober. When it's in your head, just get it out. Just pull it out of there. Don't worry about sentence structure. Don't worry about any of that other stuff. Just get it out there and then come back, and do the editing you want to do. And that just gets it out of your head and puts it on paper. The other one is you cannot edit an empty page. So don't just sit there and think about it. Get it out of your head. Get it down there. You can't edit an empty page. And a lot of that's meant for people that write a lot. They'll wake up in the morning, every morning, a half an hour earlier than normal, just to write. They'll make some coffee, sit down, and write for that extra 30 minutes a day, or find a time during the day that they can do it. Anyway, can you share with our listeners maybe an internet resource that you use when you write?
Because my book was on divorce, I can't honestly share one particular resource, because depending on the nature of which of the 46 chapters I was writing, what I would simply do is go on Google, and I would write divorce and then the topic I was writing about, and I would look for a resource or something that was written or statistics that would support the point that that chapter was discussing. So for me, because of my topic, there wasn't any one particular resource. My real estate books, I would typically, I got a lot of statistics and data from the company that today is known as auction.com. It used to be known as Realty Track. So I would go there, and that was an example of the real estate books where you could get a lot of information from one source. But for divorce, I think the nature of the topic requires a lot of different sources you got to go to.
So
I
you
use
didn't
my
have
old
to
friend
worry
Google.
about using like a thesaurus or something like that.
No. I mean, in these days, there's write-in and sentence structure is even if that's not something that you're particularly good at, a good software program will help you and tell you when your sentence structure is off, and then if something even doesn't get corrected there, that's the purpose of having a great editor put a different set of eyes on your manuscript before you publish.
Right. Okay, Andy, we're going to go into the grand finale. And in the grand finale, what I want you to do is take your time and tell the listeners about your book.
Sure. First thing I'm going to say, everybody, is that if I had it to do over again, I would change the title, because I think the title is given the wrong impression. When it says "Take the High Road, Divorce with Compassion for Yourself and Your Family," I believe many hear that title, they see it online, and they think, well, I don't want to get that. That's about compromising everywhere, and I'm really upset, and I know what I want. I know what I want to get out of my divorce. But that's not the message of my book. One of the most powerful lessons that I learned, and this came from attorneys, Michael, is that they said the more focused a divorcee is, the less they're going to spend, and the more likely they are to achieve their primary goals. So I wrote chapters about that where I took that advice. I said, okay, so what the attorney was really saying is write down, force yourself to write down 2 or 3 of your primary divorce goals and compromise everywhere else. And being able to compromise on all these things that are less important is going to save you money on one hand, because there's going to be fewer things for your attorney to argue about. And number 2 is going to increase the likelihood that you achieve the 2 or 3 things that are important to you. And that's a big part of what Take the High Road means during the divorce negotiations. Once you are divorced, what it means there is to reduce the number of items that you're battling with your ex about. And again, that will enable you to or greatly increase the likelihood that you are successful getting the things that you really want. And it's kind of like the same rules that we operate under when you have a healthy marriage. You compromise on as much as you can, or let your spouse have his or her way as much as you can. And hopefully, then you get the things that you need, or you really want. In my own family, Michael, my parents had a very good marriage. And I once asked my Dad, Mom is a little challenging for me. You have such a great marriage. I asked him this question when I was single, Michael. What's your key? What's your key to success? And I never forgot what he said. He said, Andy, I let your mom have her way 90% of the time. So when I actually open up my mouth, she typically says yes. And it was so simple, but so powerful. And that is one of the strongest points in this book. And I think this has been something that has been really helping people. Okay. So again, taking the high road doesn't mean giving away the farm, guys. It means really being very strategic about where you draw your lines in the sand, where you do argue. And there's also a lot of strategy in my book that, let me take a step back and say, in all these interviews I did with divorcees, I believe every single one, Michael, the divorcee would say, no matter what I do, he says the opposite. No matter what I do, she's going to say no to, or she objects to, whatever. So there is a point to take away from that, ladies and gentlemen, and that is that You cannot control your former partner in a divorce world. You couldn't live with that person under one roof. Then you can't control what he or she does when you're in different households. So your strategies have to be unilaterally based. And this is one of the most powerful themes of my book, Michael, is that the book deals with advice that you can control, things that you can do yourself to make it easier on you and your children. And some of these strategies and tactics are designed to eventually result in a change of behavior from your spouse. But you can't control him. You can't control her. You've got to work within the things that you can control, and that's your action steps and your items.
Okay, well, it sounds like a fantastic book. I mean, I wish I had that book, some years back. I've been divorced 4 times, and the first one was extremely difficult, but the next 2 were extremely easy. This last one was extremely easy, but the first one was really tough, and the book wasn't there. So, Andy, we thank you so much for being with us here today, opening up to us, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate this too. Again, this is Michael T. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, scroll down to the icon of your choice, where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey. You can download and follow us there, and please leave a review. Don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter and get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Book Party Podcast is owned and powered by MTM Legacy Publishing, LLC. This is Michael T., and we are signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party Podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.